Hi.
Hi.
Still 2 minutes to go, so we'll wait a little bit more. Last checks that everything is okay. I think so. And I also recommend, you can do whatever you like, of course, but if you're on gallery view, then you can kind of get a sense of of people here. Okay. Do you have a cup of tea, Yonatan?
I have the remnants of my coffee.
It doesn't look like it's going to last for an hour.
No.
Okay.
If I have still 1 minute, I'll go and have a refill.
Yeah, sure, do that.
Yeah.
It's an important thing. So we're waiting for Yonatan, who's preparing some more coffee. And we'll be beginning in just a second. Once again, I'll just ask you all to stay muted. It's really, really important for the quality of sound and recording, and also so that you won't find yourself on the recording later. So, so just stay muted, okay? But you can have your video on if you like. So a second to go, and we'll start. It's really nice to see both people I know and people I don't know, and people I can only guess, who S is, for example. Sorry. So, Yonatan.
Hello.
Okay. With the coffee. Yeah. So everything seems to be in working order, and we're starting. There'll be time for questions and discussions at the end. You can also write questions and reactions in the chat. We may be able to take some questions as we go along. We'll have to see how it works. So now the formal beginning. So welcome to everyone who's here with us on Zoom. And again, please stay muted. And welcome to those watching on Facebook Live. And to anyone who's watching this in the future on YouTube. It's cool to talk with the future once in a while. They're already there in a way, and we're here to continue a series that's been going on for a while now. It's called What Makes Our Inner Work Work? And of course, what doesn't, or what interferes with the working of the inner work. And of course, we're also talking to a certain degree about what makes life work, or perhaps more than work, what makes life really worth living, perhaps, I dare say. And today I'm joined by Yonatan Levy. And Yonatan is many things. Amongst other things, he's a playwright and director and a teacher and a social entrepreneur. And he's co-founder of Shakked Waldorf High School in Tiv'on, and also of the Sheikh Abreik festival in Tiv'on, which perhaps some of you are familiar with, and the social arts mill at Heartiya. So welcome, Yonatan. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting.
All right. And, to begin with, and so we all get to know you better, I'd love to hear about, what you've been doing in the past years, perhaps even the past decade. You know, you choose what to talk about, but you know, I'm really curious, for example, about the combination, if I get it correctly, that you seem to be making between community and art, and the art of teaching, and spirit, should I say. And you yourself are also an artist and a playwright and director, as I've said. I've seen some of your powerful work. And so I'd love to hear a little bit. Is there anything you'd prefer to start with?
I'm a bit embarrassed, you know, I've just been exposed in a certain way, so I don't know from where to begin. If you can lead me the way, okay, I will follow, yes.
Okay, sure. So for example, you know, there's the festival, the Sheikh Abreik festival in Tiv'on. A fascinating idea. It was quite amazing to watch it from afar, because I don't live in Tiv'on, and to see this kind of social thing happening. Can you share a little bit how it came about and what you experienced and stuff like that?
Yes, the Sheikh Abreik festival stemmed from my initiative how to make culture a transformative factor inside society and community.
Yeah.
And I was approached by Eli Brook, an old friend of mine, that for many years he said, why don't you do this kind of theater project with all Tiv'on? There's a certain village in Germany that produces the Passion Play every 10 years with everybody in the village, like in a kibbutz play. And he thought of some kind of theatrical huge thing in which everybody takes part. And I thought about that for a while, and then I had some intuition that, you know, you can use one director and 1,000 people who have to realize one person's dream, but there's another model in which everybody is a director of his own dream, and you cooperate with each another in order to realize those dreams. And that, in a way, seemed to me as a more potent form of social activity.
Please stay muted. Okay, yeah.
So the festival begins with this axiom that art and creativity is basically the realm of the individual. It comes from within, and it's a free realm. And in order to realize wishes and yearnings and also sorts of this kind of vague hunches that artists have since a very young age, in order to foster these seeds, artistic seeds, you only need one another. If I can help you and you help someone third, and the third will help the fourth, and so on, you actually don't need much money, and you certainly don't need the approval of authorities. You just need to be confident enough to bring your own wish into light, and to be bold enough to ask for help, and things happen. So the festival began with a boom, and we had 250 events in 3 days, produced with no money at all. And
amazing.
And it only went bigger, because the second year was 400 events, and then 750 events, and then it went. The model of the festival was duplicated to another 5 or 6 cities.
Oh, really?
Yes. And the next step was that the National Lottery Fund, Mifal HaPais, they formed a criterion that enables any group in Israel to form a Sheikh Abreik festival and get some money to begin with. So
Wow.
we had 120 groups approaching for this fund. So this very stupidly simple idea that culture flourishes when everybody does what he wants
So
is
cool. I get the
yeah,
shivers.
it proved itself as something that is right for the times, and
Mm,
maybe in some kind of a sync with the spirit of the times, and where individuals and communities are more inclined to take care of themselves, with the less need of authority and I don't know, more kind of centralized forms of government.
cool. And can you just walk us through, just a few days of this festival? How did you feel when it was happening?
It was like the first time.
Sure. Okay.
It's kind of amazing, because it's a very wild dream, and which many people dreamed of together in order to make it realize. It's not one person's show. It's something that everybody feels. It's his festival or her festival. So there was this kind of very deep sense of intimate magic, which invaded the outer, the physical world. You live in this kind of town, and okay, it's a town, it's owned by the municipality, and there's cars and roads, and suddenly you kind of reclaim the outdoors, and you give it the artistic touch, so it becomes something which is colored by your inner colors. You say, okay, let's put a chorus here on this bridge, and you can put a theater in this park, and this houses can have these musical shows, and there's this exhibition in the commercial stores in the center of town, and everything kind of becomes art. Everything becomes designed by higher impulses.
Mm.
Okay, it's like you bring something from within. Just to take an artistic dream and to make it work after a few months of labor is not an easy thing. So when you've got thousands of people doing so, you get something which is very, very precious. And the whole festival is non-commercial. You don't get any money for anything.
Uh-huh.
So the only way something like this can survive is you do only what you want.
Mm-hmm.
And working with your will is more powerful than working with money, because when you do what you love,
Yes. Oh,
you
yes.
have endless energy.
Yeah. Passion.
Yeah, you work with the source of everything.
Yeah.
So. So that was the result. Okay, thousands of people putting their hearts out and doing something very, very special. So it's a very good feeling.
Yeah. And what do you think happened to people in Tiv'on, those who kind of participated in it? How did it affect them?
I think this festival enhanced a dormant sensibility, or some kind of dormant or less dormant, that people can lead their lives independently. Okay, it's like this kind of victory of grassroots or individual initiative, and it's a proof that it can be done. Like, if many people want some good thing and they are willing to sacrifice for it, you can achieve everything. So everybody knows that, but not all the time do you have kind of these actual proofs
Right. Right.
that it's possible on a very, very large scale in a rather short time, like a few months, and then you have something which is unprecedented, and you feel that, okay, if you can do it in culture, you can do it in economics, and you can do it in government, and you can do it in law, and you can do it in the punitive system, and you can do it everywhere. in this way, it leads to the next concept of, what is social art? Like, it's not only using art to bond social ties, but it is treating society as a art form. Okay, it's not something that is just placed on us and then we have to, okay, how do I deal with this society? But if I understand that society stems from inside, that actually society itself with all its institutions is an extension of what happens inside, then the gate opens, at least a bit,
a crack,
for trying and to try and form society from within, as an art form, not as a science.
Which perhaps brings us to your current project, if I understand correctly. Maybe I'll read something I kind of roughly translated. We're talking about the social arts mill in Heartiya.
Yes.
And what I read there were things fascinating and very intriguing, things like encounter or meeting as a spiritual event, social art, how can we build social life as an artistic activity inspired by spiritual ideas, and how do social structures evolve from the actions of the individual, stuff that you just mentioned, and what's the relation between education and art? This was fascinating to me. How can we think about a class, course, or learning period as a composition in time, space, and content? So
it sounds very pretentious when you place it all together. Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that, and it's the second year, right? And I think you're prepared for the next year right now.
Yes, we're gathering the group for the second year. In a school, a social arts school or program. Yes, it's based on these ideas exactly. The feeling, that I think many artists or even non-artists are compelled to feel some dissatisfaction if they feel that their art or action is not connected to other people. Okay, modern times is not very favorable to this kind of solitary artist type, and I think that at least many people feel that in order to make their activity meaningful, it has to be connected in some way to the social realm, and this program is kind of an attempt to bring something which is a combination between some yearning for the artistic and the spiritual and the social. Okay, this kind of triad of impulses, and yes, it begins with, as you mentioned, with the beginning of social life, which is a meeting between two people. That is like the atom, the double atom of the social life. What is it as a spiritual event? What happens when two people meet? If we begin with the spiritual outview, in which the human being itself is a spiritual being, what happens between two spiritual beings? What is the dynamics? How do they affect each other, enhance each other? What is conflict? What is cooperation? How do you look at a meeting from a perspective which is more than arbitrary or physical? And this leads to many considerations, and we'll work with anthroposophy, Dr. Steiner's anthroposophy, which is in a way the source of inspiration of much many things that I do stems from Steiner's work.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the dialogical tradition of Buber and Levinas and innumerable others that place this thing, what is a meeting as a spiritual being, as a spiritual event.
Yes.
The second trimester is about the social art itself, like how do we do stuff, how do we create the world?
Mm-hmm.
And the third is about teaching as a art form.
Fascinating. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. All are invited to the call.
Yeah, maybe you can just tell people how to get in touch with you if they're interested. Your email or
yes, certainly,
like
certainly, either through you or directly through the Facebook. Yeah.
Okay, so you can check out Yonatan Levy. You see how it's spelled on Facebook, for example. Great. Okay. Now, this series is really around the subject of what makes our inner work work, as you know. And the more I think about what makes my personal inner work work, and my students' work, and the people that I work with, you know, I just watch how they flourish, and I notice what works and what doesn't work. And I was wondering, when you look at your life, what do you feel makes your work work? If you have anything to say about it, of course.
Yes, I was kind of very excited about that question, and tried to think, okay, what makes my inner work work? Does it work actually? So, and I came up with a few things.
Mm-hmm. Shoot.
And I think it begins with some kind of intensive search. You have to begin with, you know, really, really wanting something which isn't very clear for you in the beginning. Like if I look at, you know, the beginning of my path in this life, then I can see that, okay, I was inquisitive as a child. I remember, you know, speaking with my dad. We were talking about the self. I was in Kita Gimel in the 3rd grade, and he was telling things about the I, the self. And I remember having this kind of intuition that there's no such thing as the I, because once you use the miyuda, the article the, it's not you anymore. It's not I. So you can't treat the I as something, as an object. And this kind of sparkled some kind of intellectual search for the beginning. And I was very, not completely intellectual though, it was very passionate. But it was intellectually led. So I was kind of trying to solve out the riddle of relations between spirit and matter and everything. And then,
you know, it's interesting because it's not something I've spoken about yet in depth in this series, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But I also remember my path beginning with a kind of search, but with perhaps somewhat different trigger. When I went out of somehow brought myself out of a 10-year depression when I was about 23 or 24, I became extremely interested, or it was more than interested. I really understood that I needed to know how to live, you know, and to understand, you know, how to do it well, and to actually figure it out. And that was a very important first trigger for me in this kind of becoming an explorer.
Yes. Yes, I think that the search, it begins with, it is propelled by something that you are searching for. Okay, that what makes you really, really interested in the spiritual is the spirit itself. So in a way, you're looking for something which is propelling you, but that takes time to realize, and there's some matters of compatibility between what you think and what you feel and what you are looking after or what you're searching, and that began kind of a long way, but when I think of what makes the inner work, I can speak about a few things, I think. First of all, you have to, it's a bit like these legends, the Grimm brothers legends. Like, you've got the hero, and he's got, sometimes 3 brothers, and 2 brothers fuck up, and the 3rd brother makes it.
Yes.
and when you think what makes the 3rd brother succeed in his quest, it's usually very simple things. Okay, he's kind of sincere or innocent. Okay,
interesting.
And he's or into it or unafraid. There's something very, very simple about these kind of old fables. It's not very. It's designed for everybody in a way. You just have to want something and keep it moral in a way.
Keep it moral.
Yes, yes. There's something human and moral and simple to begin, and very dedicated at the same time.
Dedicated, yeah, that's an important one.
I think these are kind of conditions for something that, for me, I can. When I value what I've gone through, I know that certain stations on the way were successful because of very, very simple things, very simple qualities, but which are not very simple. It's not easy to be very, very dedicated.
And it's not very easy to be very simple. Actually, it's kind of
no
takes a lot of work.
I had to work quite a lot in a very complicated way. But these simple qualities are just, okay, you can be good and you can be bad, and you know the truth, and what do you choose? Okay, it's sometimes as simple as that. And as a path, you can say, okay, you are remembering yourself, okay, in a very, very simple way, in a simple sense. You just have to understand what you are and who you are and what is to be a me or an I, and where does your light of consciousness come from? And if you delve deeply enough through an extensive period of work, then something develops almost inevitably, I think.
Yes, I agree. What kind, stop me if I'm asking something that's too personal. What kind of work did you do, or are you doing?
It depends when, because I went through various stages, and each time it was something else. And sometimes it was like remembering, trying to remember who you are as long as possible. And sometimes it was forgetting. Now, if I look at the course of my life, sometimes it was okay. Now something inner was like, okay, leave meditation alone. Don't do anything. Just go and be a person, work, act, be in the world.
So that's kind of, for some sometimes that's the inner work, I can say.
Sometimes the inner work is not to do inner work.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
It's like being a
like
person.
Sometimes it's the inner work is resting sometimes, you know. Yeah.
Absolutely. And being kind of like, during my 20s, I was very, very inclined to the spiritual, and all my search had this kind of extreme turn. So I was like, let's get out of the mind, out of the body, out of all kinds of conditioning, and realize my true self, and so on and so on. And in my 30s, I said, okay, this is just useless, or one side, or not maybe useless, but one-sided in a way which I cannot approve, and I don't feel it's right. So. And then it was I was into raising a family and finding work, and I felt, okay, I have to root, because being a spirit is only half of your full being.
Absolutely.
And you just don't leave the world for itself. There's something absurd in just, you know, trying to achieve, or even to remember who you are without doing something with it. It felt wrong. So being an able person was in a way part of the inner work for certain periods of time.
Yes.
And then it combines, okay, you at the same time you want to be yourself, and you don't want to forget who you are, and I don't know, identify with parts in you which aren't the full aren't your full identity, and sometimes it's just doing the right thing in the right place and being dedicated to it, whatever it comes. And in the middle, there is some mystery between these 2 points of remembering and doing, which you can say these are the more 2 active elements of the inner way. Okay, it's something I control. If I want, I'm gonna do something. If I wish to, I will try to remember my true identity. And there's something in the middle, which is, I don't know, it's more on the grace side, or the passive side, or surrendering side, or being, you know, trying to approach the higher force in you with humbleness. You know, you feel very meek and worthless, and you just ask for help, or you dedicate yourself to work. You say, okay, God, I'm for you. Just do what you want. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm not very good in handling this thing called life. You take over. It's yours. And I think that repeated attempts in this manner, like you give way, you give some kind of, you open some kind of empty space inside you, because I think, you know, the most advanced, the advancement in inner ways are also led by grace, and not really controlled as you control a project, for instance.
Yes.
You know, the inner development is not it's not your project.
Isn't it? Also,
not as like everything else is a project. It's like God's project. You know, you can decide, you know, to postpone stuff or to enhance stuff, and it's not completely like anything else, in my view.
Do you see, when you talk about God's project, do you see God as something separate from you?
As something bigger, not separate. Like, in a way, in one sense, you are part of the infinite, but on the other side, this infinite and you is not exactly the same. Like, the bigger infinite is bigger, is infinitely bigger.
Well, I'm not sure that I agree with that, but that's perhaps for another conversation. But and I completely understand what you're saying, of course. I also had times, I even remember one specific day in my life where for some reason, I never understood why there was no external reason, but suddenly I remember feeling extremely humiliated and said, oh, that's interesting. You know, it was really humiliating. You know, it was the real thing. I felt it. It wasn't just a touch, you know. But I said, that's an interesting thing to experience. And since perhaps I didn't have a lot of chances to feel it kind of in real life, thank God, I just got the experience and went through it without arguing with it, you know, without being afraid of it. I just experienced it and I saw that side of things. Yeah, so it's definitely, you know, one part of what works. Yeah. Any other things that you noticed when you were thinking about that?
Yes, I think that the use of psychedelics was also very, very important because during the first stages of the spiritual way, I would say that it was more theoretical or emotional, or theoretical emotional, and you feel things and you can think about things and you know that they're true in a way, but you don't have a full experience, or you don't, the experience isn't deep enough. And through psychedelics, there's something happens between the relations between the spirit and soul and your physical body, and things happen in a way that, okay, this stuff is for real. And you realize things about your own spirit, like how your own true self is part of the spiritual world, and then you have, I would say, fuel to go on further, but having this certainty or a certain validation of early intuitions is something which was very, very important.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I teach is how to do shamanic journeying, for example, without psychedelics. I'm not against psychedelics, by the way. I'm just, it's very freeing when you can have extremely powerful experiences, you know, just lying on the rug in your living room without taking anything. Yeah, so just to mention that to everybody, it's another option. You don't have to take psychedelics. You can learn how to change your state of consciousness at will. If you put enough effort and your, you know, open-mindedness into it, it works. Yeah. Anything else that comes up? You know, even when you look at your students, maybe something comes up for you. You know, who are the students that you see flourishing and growing more than others?
I'm a high school teacher. You mean like you mean the Heartiya school?
Well, and anywhere, you know, anywhere you got to teach people.
I don't teach spiritual stuff in the direct way. You know, I teach theater and I teach about teaching, and but leading people in a spiritual path is not something I should do.
not a thing you should do.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Not yet, at least. But of course, through talking about art, through talking about society, through talking about psychology, of course, there is. If you try to speak from a spiritual perspective, the spirit comes in. and you have this element of some kind of teaching.
Yeah.
But I don't, it's not something, you understood me, okay.
Yes, I did. Uh-huh. All right. By the way, is there anything you'd like to ask me?
Yes.
Okay.
When we met, I know about, that first you were in the voice dialogue
Yes.
thing, and then about the shamanic development, I was less acquainted with your work, but I was wondering that I wanted to ask you that during the identification of different voices inside you,
Yeah.
when you see that each voice is a part of you but not your whole, would you say that there is a voice which is the real you?
From my perspective, no.
Mm-hmm.
No. What I see and choose to see also perhaps is that the more of my parts I know and accept, the more I am both, a multitude, perhaps, and I'm many things, but I'm also nothing at the same time. And this is a real experience, it's not just theory. And in voice dialogue, which is kind of the longest thing that I've been doing, the idea is that little by little, a state of being is revealed that you could call the aware I. These are only terms, it's kind of useful terms. And the aware I is, from my perspective, is not a part. It's a state of being, it's a state of consciousness. And from there, you can really be both this and that, but neither this nor that at the same time. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the paradoxical things that naturally happens when you actually do the work, and you experience that more and more, and it becomes kind of a little by little a way of life, and not only a moment here or there. Yeah, so no, I don't think that there is one part. It's also, the same thing when I think about, people often talk about the truth, and again, from my point of view, sometimes when I teach, I take a glass or something like that and say, well, when you look at it this way, it looks like one thing. Well, it's a full glass. That's dangerous. I'll take an empty glass. When you look at it this way, from this perspective, it looks like a completely different thing than when you look at it this way or this way. It's like a completely different object, or this way. Mm-hmm. So for me, the truth, or who I am, is something that is continuously evolving, developing, and growing. And it's definitely, I have the chills when I say it, the shivers. It's definitely not something finite. And actually, the more, as you said, I started with voice dialogue, which is kind of, again, from my perspective, an exploration of the, it's one way of seeing it, the DNA of the human consciousness, or of humanity, perhaps, of human beings. It's the DNA. But then, things started to expand to all sorts of other things that now I call them all things like identity bubbles or identity fields or consciousness bubbles and fields. And these can be also things from like your past, or from collective things, and all sorts of other very weird things. And it's all me in a way. And for me actually, you know, I don't tend to use the word God very often. You know, I have other terms, but for me, that's also me, you know? So I'm both very local and small and just, you know, a little pebble in everything, but I'm also everything. And I actually learned to experience both the tininess and inconsequence, and at the same time the hugeness and the you know, being a creator in a way. Mm-hmm. And that's again a very interesting balance to keep. Yeah, you're muted. Yeah.
Yeah, I had this small problem. I was interrupted by a phone call.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that are really important from my point of view is for people who want their inner work to work, to be very open to surprises, really, regarding who they are and who they aren't.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Would you say that, you know, this, when you dissolve into many kind of eyes or separate voices, do you still retain a sense of a intelligible biography? You say that you have a story.
It's a very, very good question. In a way, it gets challenging at some point. And I feel that one of my interesting challenges in the past decade or so was to both retain my identity as this local aura, as I discover more and more other auras and other parts and other lifetimes and other weirdnesses, and manage to follow more than one line of how do you say storylines, and not lose my storyline in a way. It's possible, again, like so many things, it requires to do the work, which so few people actually do, sadly enough. And I have something to say about that actually in a way, in a moment. But when you actually do it, no matter when you begin, you can begin when you're 80, as far as I'm concerned, but you just do it step by step by step. You find a way that works for you, whatever that is, and you get to know yourself or yourselves. And then very naturally, in a very organic way, it usually grows even more. And I forgot what I was going to say, Yonatan. Help, help. I lost the storyline for a second. What was I going to say? It'll come back probably. I don't know. Anyway, so if you actually do the work and you really devote time to it, then you just you discover your many selves, but you don't become you know, one of the very common fears is that you become fragmented. But actually, my experience with myself and with people that I work with is the exact opposite. If you do it right, you become more and more integrated, whilst being a lot of things at the same time, having more than one storyline going on in a way. And I think, you know, one of the things that came up for me to share with you and with the people listening here I see somebody thinks that they know. I'll check in a moment, okay? So I won't forget the next thing I wanted to say. So one of the things that are really, really important for me to talk about is because there's this social idea here that we're discussing, that you bring with you, is that how important I feel it is for people who are teachers, leaders, healers, whatever, people who work with other people or are trying to change the world or change the city or change things in general, to really, really understand that there's actual work to be done, and that if we don't do our inner work very, very conscientiously, then it's not going to work. Again, it's only my opinion, but that's what I see, is that you really have to be very conscientious and do the work. And it might even be every day, every single day, do some work.
Oh, yes.
And then suddenly, you know, it kind of builds up the energy, the ability, the trust in yourself and in the process, in God, whatever, grows, and then you can actually begin to really do things on a larger scale without causing harm while doing them. I'm checking what somebody wrote in the chat. You said you have something to say about the fact most of the people don't do the work. Yeah, so I think I said it. Thank you. Yeah. So we're nearing the end of our meeting, Yonatan. First of all, I wanted to ask you if there's anything else you want to say or ask of any kind. And then I think we can check if anybody wants to ask questions or respond to anything or something like that. So is there anything you'd like to say?
We just, touched
very,
very briefly, and things which we can talk about, for hours and hours. So I have nothing else to say.
Okay.
I'd rather wait for responses and questions.
Great. So what I suggest is that anybody who feels like writing it in the chat can do it either in English or Hebrew. And anybody who wants to actually speak live, then you can raise your hand in the participants button. You'll find a way of raising your hand. And it usually takes time for people to actually type in the chat room. So we'll give them some time to see if anybody wants to say something. Okay, I see somebody wants to talk. So I think it's Tlelai. Tlelai?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, we're with you.
Yes. I wanted to say that I'm really touched from this conversation since I live in Tiv'on, and I did create a project there for women for many years and hosted Sheikh Abreik, but I never knew Yonatan. And I know Eli Brook for many years. He was one of my teachers when I was really, really young. So all this combination of doing the transformation experiences through the drum and through voice dialogue, and the combination of this with art is such a natural combination in my heart that I just want to say thank you. Because when you both talked, it was like parts in me that are looking for art to create shifts in consciousness. And my nourishment is the shamanic journeys that I do for many years, and the voice work, voice, not just voice dialogue. Yeah. So it's, for me, it's such a beautiful weaving experience to listen to you and to see how we can all evolve using our unique threads of colors and it's and inner voices that are in us that can be expressed. So I love this meeting.
Thank you. Thanks. Anybody else want to say something? By the way, Yonatan, until we see if anybody wants to ask something, do you know that one of the things that happened for me when I began, it started more than 20 years ago, but became very, very powerful this past decade or so, is that this combination of shamanic work and voice dialogue, parts work, or selves work, brought about this thing that all sorts of techniques that I found out to really heal our past. That was one of the things that I taught these past few years when we weren't very much in touch. And that's another really important thing to mention, because sometimes, we rush forwards, which is very important sometimes, to do things and to heal and to advance and stuff like that. But it's as if our past is making it really impossible for us unless we actually kind of time travel into the past and actually meet our past selves, especially those that need healing, and figure out how to heal them. So that's kind of another thing that we often neglect, because it seems to us like something that was, that's kind of, we got over it, or it's dead and gone, or, why linger or waste time on things that were in the past. And it turns out that it's very difficult to move forward without doing that. So wanted to mention that. Anybody else wants to say something or ask Yonatan? Okay, somebody here wrote, Yonatan and Ora, how do you see transformation, healing, and spiritual work on the political aspect? And do you think it can go beyond a certain niche of people? Thanks for that. Yonatan, anything you
Yes, about the political world, I think it's a very interesting question. Very interesting question, yes. And it has a connection with voice dialogue, actually, because when you look at the political map, you have a very accurate picture of different voices holding different truths and different perspectives. And most of, the political problems are exactly of not listening and being very, very one-sided on one value or one voice, or seeing things only from the left or only from the right or only from this side or that side. And through voice dialogue or through anthroposophy also, you can train your mind to analyze and feel situations, political situations, as some kind of group work. Okay, that you actually need all voices. You need left and you need right, and you need progressives, and you need traditionalists, and you need religious people, and you need secular people, in order to maintain some kind of balance in a dynamic world. So you need these different voices and connection between them, and understand how they all relate to you, because everything happening is happening in your inside your consciousness, and if you respond to it, it means something to you as well. So the first thing, on the political spiritual work, is to try and to open your mind to all views and to make the best of everything. It's like a puzzle. You've got many, many parts, and you have to feel what is right and where, okay, in order to have a positive effect on society as a whole. What role each part of society holds, and why are they shouting? Because sometimes people don't shout for nothing. They shout because something is very, very important to them. And if it's important to them, it means it is important because we are one, basically.
Right.
So the first step in the political sphere, I think, is to enter this kind of integral and multifaceted worldview in a serious way, and to really dissolve yourself, get rid of your leftism or right-wingism, and be able and flexible to understand what's going on. Further intuitions I found in Steiner's work, where he analyzes the state as an extension of the human being. Okay, and he takes, for instance, the three basic values of the French Revolution: freedom, liberty, and fraternity, and he applies them to different realms of the social organism. Like freedom, it has to do with the cultural and spiritual side of life, which is education and culture and belief, and that should be completely free. And equality is to the political realm, okay, when we all want to be equal in the eyes of the law, or we have some kind of equalness we can even feel intuitively, but you don't bring the equalness into education, and you don't bring the equality into the cultural life, because in the cultural life you want to be an individual, and you want to be better than everybody else, and you want to be unique, and you have very, very important qualities which will be eradicated if you impose equality where it's not needed. Same thing, fraternity, which is in Steiner's view, for the economical life. Very an interesting thing, like thinking about the economy not as freedom based, which is capitalism, and not as equality based, which is socialism, which is something different, where I feel our connection, but it is more flexible than equality. Like I want you to flourish economically like I do, and I feel some kind of responsibility, but you don't formalize it in either extremities, in either polarities, like where everybody gets the same thing, and or everybody just does what he wants. And so that, I would say, are two good starting points for a political spirituality, I would say.
Yes, sounds good. I think I would like to add here to this question. You ask how it can, go further than people who are now talking about these things. I haven't seen it happening yet, but I think it can happen very, very soon. That some leaders would actually do their work again, and will really know their various aspects and selves. Just like Yonatan said, the moment you know your inner Haredi, for example, or your religious side, although you may not be religious, and you know your very right-wing side and your very leftist side, and your your inner capitalist and stuff like that, then you can work with all these people and all these aspects of society in a completely different way. You won't be judgmental. You'd really understand what they're talking about, and you won't create more polarity which is what usually happens when we do things nowadays, is that everything just becomes torn more and more, instead of just saying, okay, it's another point of view, which I can understand because I've been doing my inner work. So some of my kind of hope is that more and more people will actually do the work, and then one or two of them will perhaps get to the Congress or Knesset or be our prime minister, who knows? Working on it. Somebody writes, bingo, Yonatan, exactly, Ora, big like. And maybe we can end with somebody who's writing, I would really be glad to see voice dialogue, members of parliament and ministers learning voice dialogue. I would too. Yeah, thank you. So, Yonatan, anything else you'd like to say?
Thank you very much for inviting, and for all for watching and listening. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for being here. I enjoyed it a lot, and I also feel it's just the tip of an iceberg.
Yeah, we barely scratched it.
Yeah. And thank you everyone for joining us. Next week on Monday, you're really welcome to be with me at 10 a.m. And then we're moving to a different hour, but we'll talk about that soon. So thanks a lot, Yonatan Levy. Big hug, and thank you all.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.